I used to give a lot of weight to those negative comments because to me they seemed more real and helpful. Like, shame is never a catalyst for change. It's never worked. It never will.
Another question. Let's see. How do you deal with your inner bully or critic?
I have less and less of that. It's still in there for sure. It used to be really mean. Like, I'm cringing because I'm like, oh, I used to be so mean to myself, and my inner critic was just like everything under scrutiny all the time, constantly. I'm like, no wonder I was such a miserable son of a bitch. Like, I just had this voice telling me I was wrong all the time. So I try to meet it with understanding and kindness now. And I know that sounds super lame, but I'll be like, okay, I hear you. I'm listening. All right. Like, I give it time. I give it acknowledgement. I'll actually consider it. Like, is there anything useful in there for me? Mm-hmm. And many times I just sass back at this point.
Sass back?
Oh, I sass back. Oh, yeah.
To yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I have an inner voice that is very protective and very sassy. Yeah. And she will jump in and stand up for me oftentimes. Like, so developing a mama bear internally has been really helpful for that. And then I remember reading this book in particular, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. It's one of the best books I've ever read.
What to say when you talk to yourself.
What to say when you talk to yourself. And it like has, breaks down the research on how we talk to ourselves and the impact that has and all of these different things and like when we're negative and all of that. It was one of the most mind-blowing books. So actually having a standard practice of changing the way I talk to myself brought that inner critic's voice way, 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 way down. So that, oh gosh, if you have a really loud critic, that's one of the best books I could recommend.
I do, and it's something that actually I think led to my mental collapse last week. I talk about depression rarely. I talked about my anxiety a lot, which if I was to illustrate what does anxiety look like, it's just me with more hair, and that's my version of anxiety, because I look nuts. Yeah, I had a mental collapse last week, and it was just really difficult for me to get by. And I always like to share this if I'm comfortable, because I want somebody else to take note of this and just say, you're not alone. Mm-hmm. And I was incredibly hard on myself last week. I was saying to myself that I was a terrible business owner, I was a terrible wife, I was a terrible mom. And I said to myself, this is not me. I just need to get out of this funk that I'm in. But I also need to give myself the space to be in that low point. Because and somebody told me this once, a great friend said, the only direction you're going is up at that point. Mm-hmm. And so whenever I am just a bully to myself or a critic to myself, I even tell my son this too. I say, dude, you need to be nice to yourself. You need to be nice to yourself and just say, look, like this kindness or this bullying that you're giving yourself is just, it's not healthy for you, and you're just being really hard on yourself. It's not accomplishing anything. Mm-hmm. People sometimes just don't want to be around you anymore because of the fact that you're just difficult on yourself, and they're going to try really hard to tell you how they feel or try to tell you how great you are, and you just can't listen because you're just not in the right headspace for it.
Yeah.
So I will say that, and one of the things I think is kind of fascinating about myself that I'm learning, or I have learned, is that when when the highs are really high, the lows are really low. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why that is, but I'm looking into it so that way I stop being an inner bully to myself. But think about this: August I reconnect with my family. September I get married, and then on top of that, we go on this epic trip for, the San Francisco Cowboys game. And then all of a sudden, we win the Cumbres and the company's firing on all cylinders. So all those 5 things, I was like, I don't know how much higher I can get. And then all of a sudden, I just crashed. Mm-hmm. And I just was just dead to society at that point in time. So I think understanding why my mind went from that up and down, that rhythm, I don't know. I don't expect to know the answer. I just know I'm cognizant of it or I know when it's in my vicinity. So that way I know what to do to manage it and not be pushed to that point again. Or more importantly, just be nice to myself. So that way I don't listen to that inner critic anymore.
We have this weird idea that negative things are more accurate or more truthful or more beneficial. Like if you're a very positive person and optimistic, people go, well, I'm just a realist. Like the negative side is more real. And it's not. And I used to give a lot of weight to those negative comments because to me they seemed more real and helpful. Like shame is never a catalyst for change. It's never worked. It never will.
Neither is guilt. Yeah.
Guilt can, because it's like, oh, we've learned something and all that. But like actually attacking oneself doesn't create change. It creates more opportunities to do harmful things to ourselves because we think we're a terrible person.
Yeah.
Right? So the shame thing isn't helpful. And then when people start saying positive things, they think it's like fluffy or less substantial. Yeah. And it's like, neither is any more true. So just pick the one that helps you align with who you are and the life you want to live. Yeah. And then do that.
Studies have shown that it's more difficult to actually be positive than it is to be negative?
We have a negativity bias. The brain is always looking for things that's gonna cause harm or potentially kill us.
Because it's a fight or flight instinct,
yeah,
right?
So it's alert for those type of things. And we also live in a society that so many companies profit off of negativity and off of us being in those like lower emotions like fear and anger and things like that. And now we are in this like really yucky cycle around it as well. Yeah. Where I remember saying something that I liked about myself. I think I shared this before. And this woman told me, well, don't you think highly of yourself?
I know.
And I said, yes.
Yeah.
Don't you? And like the look on her face, it was like, oh shit. And I'm like, yeah, why would I be being mean to myself?
Yeah.
But that's the norm, right? Like if self-deprecating humor and all of that is the norm, but it doesn't have to be inside. Yeah, it can take extra work.
Yeah, it definitely can take extra work.
I want to say, speaking of depression, which is something I know I deal with regularly. It's like a buddy that's always just hanging out quietly, waiting.
Like, or like a bad tattoo just won't go away.
Yeah, it's like, should I jump in yet? Do you want me here now?
Yeah, mine punched me in the face.
Yeah, mine sometimes it'll be like, by the way, I was here the whole time, like building, and I'm like, great, now we're here. Let's see, there was. Okay, what do you do when everything feels like too much and you want to give up?
Ooh, I was looking at these questions earlier when you were talking. I didn't see that one. Okay. Ooh, that crept up on me. What do you want to... Okay, so say that again.
What do you do when everything feels like too much and you want to give up? Which sounds kind of a little bit like what you were describing from last week.
Oh, yeah.
And now you're on the other side of it. So what did you do? What was helpful?
Ooh... What did I do when I wanted to give up? I had to reevaluate what was on my mental list of things I still wanted to do. Because we had the motivation episode, right? Mm-hmm. Where I talked about, what is my motivation? Why have I lacked that motivation? And I have little things I want to accomplish. And I have little things I want to accomplish, but nothing so major or nothing motivating to be that major anymore, because I've already accomplished the big things I wanted to accomplish. I wanted to open up a company, be a mom, be married, or have a partner, right? And have people that I love around me and take care of my family. Like, I took care of those things, and I still am, right? So I think what kept me going was the fact that it goes back to the people around me, right? The people around me bring me so much life. Husband, kid, you, Justin, the rest of the staff, the rest of the team, the nonprofit, the mission work that we do. Like, for example, I got a text from one of the clients at the Asian Business Collaborative that he's about to sign a lease on his new business. And that brought me so much joy. It reminded me why I'm still here or why I'm still doing what I do. Because knowing that person is doing really well, but he did it on his own, but I was behind him just giving him a pat on the back, not telling him what to do. It was such joy. And then I also looked at my aunt. I hung her picture. 2 weeks ago was her death anniversary, and I hung her picture in my wall from the picture I found of her during the wedding. And her legacy still hasn't been fulfilled yet. And I feel like there's a couple more things I need to do to cross off the list to make sure her legacy is still fulfilled or still continues on. And I know I'm one of the pieces of the puzzle for that. I'm not the person continuing on her legacy. The whole Asian community is. But I thought about that and I said, you know, losing her was so painful, and commemorating her life, I think, is good motivation to kind of keep going, right? So I think about the people that helped me get to where I am, and I think about the people that are around me now, and they give me motivation. So I don't know if that's the best answer per se. I'm still kind of trying to figure that question out, but the people around me bring me joy. So yeah. No, don't. You look like you're gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
I'm just thinking, this is something that I've come up against many times. I think all of us do, right? And especially anybody who does set outside of convention and do their own thing. It's a tough journey, and a lot comes up in that. And there's a lot of loneliness that can come up. That sense of nobody understands type of thing, and whatnot. And I'm just viewing different versions of myself from the past that are right there where you were talking. And
there was a Cards Against Humanity card we played in on Friday. I love that game. I really love that game. And there was a card that says, I just want to be able to call my mom and give her a hug because life's not fair.
Yeah.
And my son was the one who gave it to me, and I was like, oh, are you having problems, son? And so it was just kind of cute because you just have those moments where you're like, I just want my mom.
Yeah. I had a moment. This is a weird story that I don't know why is coming out of my mouth right now. But I was really struggling this weekend. I've been having big emotional stuff that's been coming up that I've been working through in my own emotional healing. And I try to set time aside. Because I'm like, it's okay to be sad. I don't run from it anymore. So I'll try to be like, okay, let's sit with the sadness. Yeah. And it was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I don't need anything. And I was like, okay, are you sure? Because I definitely feel you in there. And I feel like I need to cry. And it was like, no, thanks. And I was like, okay. And so then I go about my day. I'm outside at 2:30 in the morning walking the dogs. And it's like, oh, now I'd like to come out. Oh. And so I'm just sobbing. I'm just crying at 2:30 in the morning downtown, walking the dogs. And I like to be near the ground when I'm upset. Always have been. Like, if I was sad as a kid, you won't find me on the kitchen floor. And that's still true to this day. And so I was like, well, I guess it's happening now. Let's go ahead and let it happen. So I sit down on the sidewalk, and I'm leaning up against a wall, and I'm just audibly sobbing. I mean, like, worried I'm going to wake the people up that I'm, in front of their place. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I feel this presence next to me. Is not an angel or anything. Don't worry. Don't worry. That'd be cool too. Maybe it was. Yeah. I don't know. And this person sits down with me and is like, why are you crying?
Oh, no.
And I was like, because I'm sad. And he was like, well, why are you sad? And I was just like, well, I guess I'm just going to be super open with this stranger because why not? We're here in the middle of the night. Are you going to
ever see them again?
I hope not. He might live there. I don't know. And I was honest, and I just said, my life just hasn't turned out the way I thought it would. Like nothing in my life is the way I thought it was going to be or that I worked towards or, and just like all stuff. So I'm just crying. And like, then he's like, is it your job? And he's asking me these things. And finally I turn to see who's sitting next to me. This guy is wearing a Letterman jacket. He's got a peach fuzz mustache that like a 13-year-old would envy. And I was like, oh, goodness gracious. Young, super young guy.
Yeah.
And we're talking. I finally was like, how old are you?
How old was he?
And he's like, I'm 23.
No.
Well, and part of me thought that too, where I was like, boy, because he's telling me like life can be really hard, and there's just so much in life that can be hard. And so he tells me he's 23. And then I thought, you know what? I had gone through a lot by 23. And I'm like, I don't know his life. I'm not going to be like, oh, what do you know? You're only 23. Like, and he even said, he was like, but I've gone through a lot already. And I was like, I'm going to believe you. Like,
yeah,
I had a shitstorm coming my way at 23. I thought I had gone through a lot. It was about to get way worse. Yeah. But anyway, so we talk it out and he's petting the dogs and he's just letting me cry. And I just had like a good, so my mom wasn't there, but a 23-year-old
Letterman jacket.
Guy who looked like he was going through puberty helped me out. And then because it's Albuquerque and because I live downtown, this is unusual. I hear gunshots pretty much every day, but there was an automatic rifle on my block going off.
Ooh.
It was legit scary. Like normally I'm like, oh, okay, gunshot, you get used to them. Mm-hmm. But that was like literally right on my block coming our way. And I was like, that is our cue. And I was like, do you have somewhere to be inside? And he was like, yes. And so he like walked me part of the way and I was like, no, go. Like, I live here, like, go. And then I had this like really strong inkling to just be like, by the way, some things get cooler as you get older. Like, it's not all bad. I'm like, here's this 23-year-old starting jaded and like life's hard. And I'm like, it is hard.
I was here for this one stranger. She told me it sucks.
But then I'm like, but also because it does, like, if I think back 10 years ago where I was like, oh my goodness, I was such a mess. And like, I wouldn't have guessed where I am today. And I do have so many things that have gone well. Did it turn out the way I thought? No. Is it over? Sure ain't. Have some things turn out way better than I thought? Yes. It's just like that sense of like kind of being rudderless, right? Like not really, and then losing motivation from that too. Because it's like, well, then why work towards anything if it's just not going to work out? And things, they shift and change. You got to be able to pivot, right? But so I didn't have my mom, but I did receive comfort from a young stranger in the middle of the night.
He reminds me of my son, and this will be the second to last point before we ask one more question. So we'll wrap up. So sometimes my son surprises the shit out of me. 15 years old, right? Yeah. Right now he's in his confident era. Very
fantastic.
Isolating. Yeah.
They know everything. What a burden to carry. It is everything.
Yeah, when he listens to this podcast, he's like, man, my mom is so mean about me. But what I mean specifically about this part is that sometimes he says something out of nowhere that was just exactly what I needed to hear. And it surprises me because I didn't expect it to be so prolific. But I've been told that by my family that my son is very emotionally intelligent. So of course I have that respect for him, and of course I respect him as my kid. Yeah. But he just comes out of nowhere with something that's just like sound advice, and I'm going, how the hell did you? Is that Bosky education really paying off?
What do they teach you there?
Yeah, what do they teach you over there? And so, you never know where wisdom or comfort comes from. It's just in the most odd places.
Absolutely. I always believe everyone has something to teach us. That was something my mom really instilled in me. Like, everyone you meet could have something to teach you. Like, listen and not make assumptions. And young people know things. Young people have some shit figured out. Like, so... I think you're right. I think you can learn a lot from your son.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I'm going to wrap up with this last question. We'll make it quick, so since we're running out of time. It's a good way to end the show because sometimes it does or doesn't show how we are outside of the table. So on the show, you guys don't always agree. How does that affect your work together off camera?
Oh, I'm going to let you answer that one first.
It's actually it's a very good dynamic with us outside of this table. I say that because if I wanted to hire people that were yes mans or yes women, I would be out of business. I'm always a big believer in like comfortable debate. I was a speech and debater. I loved speech and debate. I loved arguing, and even my husband loves it and hates it at the same time because I can have a conversation with him and I just like put him in a corner with it's never personal, never malicious. But I always welcome debate. It's very mentally challenging and like mentally stimulating for me. So when we are debating here, it's a debate where we're usually like having the same point but going in different directions or like crossing over each other, not in a negative way. But one of the things I find working with you is that I don't have to train you on the entrepreneur's mindset. And you look at it from a lens of a small business owner, which is obviously our target audience, or from a business owner's perspective, which is the target audience. So I feel a very large sense of comfort and trust with you that the debate part's to me is an added benefit, not a negative. So that's why I say it. Like, I think outside of the room, like, we do really well. I feel that we do really well. We always have things that we need to work on, like progress and challenges. Like, for example, I think my favorite one was, I thought you were stuck on something, and you're like, no, this is taking me a lot of work. And I'm like, okay, I'm not mad. I'm not upset. This is not an order taker kind of situation. What do we need to do together to actually accomplish the goal? And I threw out an idea. You're like, that's a great idea. Okay, let's go. That's how I am. Sometimes things can be lost in translation with any of us because because we chat on Slack a lot. Yeah. But no, I really enjoy the space that we're in together. And at work, including in this space too with Justin, you're part of the fold of the really incredible people here at the company. So, yeah.
You've definitely fostered a collaborative environment.
I hope so.
I think so. And I know something that I've worked on that you've helped me with, which is exactly, and this might come as a surprise. I don't know that I've actually said this to you, but you knew with me coming in, I didn't want to run a business anymore.
Yeah.
I was tuckered out. I had closed mine. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want all the responsibility. I don't want to be there. And yet that was the habit that I was coming from. It was the lifestyle I was coming from. I have a group project, whatever. Like I always step into that leadership role. It's just kind of been a natural one for me. And we've talked about where I need to remember my limit there, that at the end of the day, it's your company. And what I've not shared with you is that's one of the things I actually was looking for when I wanted to go to work for someone again, having someone that I was going to respect to teach me how to be a support instead of a leader. I already know how to be a leader. I was a born leader.
Yeah.
I want to know how to support others to facilitate their vision and to facilitate other leaders. That is such an honored role to play for me. And so I wanted to choose strong leaders, and I know I told you and Danielle this, and I wasn't brown-nosing in my interviews. Like, I can work many places, but how is it going to help me be a better version of me? And I wanted to be mentored by strong women leaders to learn how to be a support to them.
Yeah.
And so I think it maybe started out as an uncomfortable conversation when you were like, hey, you need to remember, like, this is my business. There comes those times. And I was like, yes, thank you. Give me that direction. That's exactly why I came to work for you. I
appreciate that. But I also think that there's always the term managing up. There's a time, like, remember last Friday, you were like, I felt the procrastination, Kristelle, and I was like, yep, I really needed to hear that. You're managing up. And managing up is as crucial as managing downward or managing laterally or as a team or as collaboratively. And I think having somebody that understands that mindset of the ups and downs and also understanding, lack of structure and mindset, like, I think you thrive when you're actually doing your thing. Mm-hmm. That's why you're the least of my worries. Justin, least of my worries. Everybody's the least of my
afterthought.
Yeah. No, I mean that. Like, some people don't actually. Spencer and I talk about it a lot. He's like, I hate your management style. He didn't say hate. He's like, I can't work for you. And I was like, well, then don't say that I treat you like an employee. He's like, no. He's like, I can't work for you because I'm from the military. Like, he grew up in a regiment. He grew up in detail. He's wired that way. Yeah. He's like, I just don't understand how you guys are so loosey-goosey. And I said, you know what? If I have to ask somebody tell them what to wear, manage the time that they show up, how they need to act, and professionalism, like, that's just exhausting. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to babysit. I'm just going to let you do you.
Yeah.
And if it works out great, if you don't get your shit done, then maybe we'll talk about something else later. I don't know.
Yeah.
People criticize that a lot. And that's just my management style. And everybody else has a different way of managing. There's some people that hated the pandemic because they couldn't see over their employee's shoulder.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't care. I don't even want to see your screen. You do you. Do your best and help out a client. Don't help me, help a client.
Yeah, and the results will be there or they won't, and then that person is not a good fit for you. And I think you do surround yourself with people that make sense for you, which is a smart move. They're not yes men. They're not everybody here is exactly the same. No. By any means.
Trust me, strategic planning has not been yes ma'am. Definitely not that.
Right, like you Justin? Open that door, they're going to kick it in. And yet there is that culture of community here, and that we, at least me, like, I feel that I'm a respected member of the team, and if I disagree, I can be like, hey, to each their own, like, do what you gonna do, but here's what I'm seeing on this side, which can be a scary thing to do.
We talked to Salvatore, incredible guy. He said something that was very interesting. There's a lot of psychological safety around here.
Yeah.
That's what he said. And I was like, what does that mean? Those are fancy words to me. And he's like, you emotionally, you let your team be safe around you. It's okay to fail. And I was like, oh, is that what it's called? So I thought that was pretty cool. Anyways,
well, creating that within a business or within ourselves.
That's hard.
Is hard
but fun.
It's fun and it's crucial. It's where creativity comes from. It's where I think a big part of success comes from, because we allow failure to be there. We allow trying to be there. We allow different versions of self-expression to be there. Creating that for yourself first and then letting that shed out to the rest of the team was probably a a big part of why we do what we do so well.
Great way to end today's podcast.
Thank you.
We are very grateful for you listening, as well as our mom always listening. And thanks for these really great questions for those of you that have submitted. Don't forget to subscribe to your favorite podcast channel or social media channels at Siarza the Agency. Otherwise, I'm Kristelle. This is Jace. Thanks again for another great episode of Stories, Success, and Stuff.